Hi, this is Hugh, and now I'm going to speak with you about, in this book, The Power of Hypnosis, hypnosis for surgery. And I'm going to give you some examples, and then I'm going to give you one fairly long example. And I hope you appreciate it. And remember, there's more in the book if you want to check it out. So I help people prepare and go through all kinds of surgeries. One was a carpenter who had sliced his hand very badly on a piece of sharp metal to the point where the doctor said he was going to have to sew up tissue and muscles and ligaments and it was going to be a pretty serious operation. Um, he had had an operation prior to that on an ankle that just went poorly, and he was in a lot of pain, and he was so bothered by that he wasn't sure that he could go into hypnosis and protect himself from the pain of the hand. Um, so anyway, he went into hypnosis pretty easily when we just got rid of that ankle thing, and went through the operation. And his wife commented on how quickly and comfortably he was healing, first of all. And when he went back a year later to get the update from his doctor, he said everything had healed completely except one little tad of fine motor coordination. And he was amazed that it had healed the way it had. So just another example of hypnosis happening. A woman wanted to go down to Boston, big hospital, to have fibroid tissues removed from her uterus. She had had a lot of x-rays in her life, a lot of medications, a lot of anesthesia just along the way, and she just didn't want to do any of that. So we arranged and we talked about it. We programmed her mind to be able to have that procedure done with hypnosis, and she was so relaxed. She didn't feel any pain, and she watched the whole operation on a monitor. Uh, Another one was unusual. A person, 65 years old or so, wanted to have his teeth removed. He never liked his teeth. They were crooked and he was embarrassed by them. So he thought he'd have his teeth removed and get dentures. The only thing was that he was really adverse to medications. So he wondered if it could be done with hypnosis. And I believed it could certainly. So we spent a couple of sessions preparing him for that. And it's important when you're doing something like that that you put a little disclaimer in, or there's something, if the unexpected happens, well, you can handle it in this way, because I wasn't going to be there. And he had asked the doctor beforehand, the dentist, um, how he was going to start, so he could, in his mind, prepare for that. And the dentist said he was going to start with the back molar on the left side. So he's in the chair, he's done his hypnosis, dentist is ready to start, and he starts, he got a small pair of pliers, my patient said. And what he did is he would wiggle the teeth and they would actually break right off, at the upper level. And that's how they take the teeth out. I thought, what a barbaric way of doing it. But anyway, so the doctor had his pliers and the fellow's there nice and relaxed, and all of a sudden he feels some sensation on his front tooth. And he opened his eyes, and the dentist had forgot where he was going to start, I guess, and started a front tooth. Well, that knocked everything out, and so here's where we had prepared him for the inevitable if it happened. And he said he told the dentist to stop for a minute. He said, I have to kind of gather myself. And he said, and now are you going to start on that tooth? And the dentist said, yes. So he kind of quickly reprogrammed himself, and it was a success. All he felt was a little bit of pressure. There was no pain, and there was no pain afterwards. And all the time that he was waiting to get the dentures, well, it was only a few days, I guess, no pain. And so he successfully had 24 teeth removed with no pain. So it's just unbelievable what you can achieve with hypnosis. So now the little longer version of a story is me. So I'm both the hypnotist and the client in this case. So over a long period of time, my right shoulder was getting kind of cranky. and I couldn't lift my arm up, much higher than that. When I finally, after trying a lot of different methods to heal it, I finally went to a doctor, had X-rays, and they said, "Well, you had end-stage osteoarthritis. There's no cartilage in there. The only solution is a shoulder replacement." So I went to the doctor, found the one that was rated the best as far as minimal invasive surgery, and talked with him about it. And he agreed. He said, "Yeah, we can do that." He said, "Do you have any questions in addition to what we said?" And I said, "Yep. I want to do it with hypnosis as an anesthetic." And he's kind of, straight-laced guy, very high, good reputation. And he looked at me and he said, "No." He said, "I don't want you, quote, waking up," because he's thinking hypnosis should go to sleep, right? So he said, "I don't want you waking up in the middle of a 2.5 hour operation and writhing around on the table and maybe yelling." So I said, "Okay." So I said, "All right," to myself, I'm going to do the next best thing. So I programmed myself. I asked my subconscious, we worked together. I programmed myself to have no pain throughout the entire operation. I programmed for 4 weeks, listening to a recording that I made about pre-operation, getting ready. And then I added to that the operation itself. Imagine it's going to be very successful and on and on. And then I imagined the follow-up. So that was a connection of combination of 4 weeks on the pre stuff, um, a couple of weeks on the operation itself and the immediate follow-up, and then 4 more weeks of the extended follow-up of all the physical therapy. So um, we went through the operation, and I was brought back into this single room that I had, and I was kind of waking up from the clutches of the anesthesia, and I was gingerly touching that was my right shoulder, my right hand, my right wrist, and just feeling them and seeing if there was any pain anywhere, the forearm, the elbow, and then I had a bandage on the shoulder, but I went just above the elbow and I had no pain of any kind that I was aware of. So I'm kind of happy about that, but still, wanting to make sure that it's actual. So I got to the point where I could kind of put a little pressure on my shoulder, and I just tried to move it very gently a little bit, no pain. And I said, well, I'm not going to take any chances and mess it up. So I'm just be happy with where I am right now. So nurses would come in regularly and have pain medication for me. And they say, "Well, I got your pain medication." And I say, "Well, I really don't need it. I don't have any pain." And they'd say, "What? You have to have pain." They've never heard of a person that doesn't have pain after 2.5 hour shoulder surgery. And the doctor had said, "There's so much more going on in the shoulder that has to be dealt with than a hip or a knee." He said, that this is a fairly major surgery. So I had fun with the nurses, and the next day, a physical therapist came along and he said, "Let's go for a walk." And we went up a stairway. We got halfway up, and he said, "Okay, we can go back down now." And he asked me what I was doing before to prepare for the surgery and what exercising I was doing, because I would go for walks with the nurse out in the hallway, and we'd be doing the old person slow walk, and I'd say, "Can we go a little faster?" I was feeling great. Anyway, so then I had 18 weeks of physical therapy, 2 days a week, and then 3 weeks of 1 day a week. So 21 weeks of physical therapy and also some homework doing it. The only time I had a little bit of pain, and here I had to put in that disclaimer, just in case, was when the woman, the physical therapist, was moving my arm through its range of motion, and she just went a little farther than I was ready for, and I just felt a little stab of pain. I just said, "Ooh," and she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I moved too far." That was the only time I had pain in all that lengthy healing process. Compare that with when I was almost finishing up, a woman came in who had had the same surgery. And she was asking another physical therapist. There were three physical therapists in this huge room, but you could hear them sometimes. So I heard her say, when is this pain going to stop? She said, I really can't stand it. And the physical therapist said, you will probably have it all the time you're going through rehab. So there was her sentence, just like that. And here's Hugh with no pain at all. So the power of hypnosis, once again, and you can read more in detail about that if you'd like to in my book, The Healing Power of Hypnosis, Chapter 18.